Hi everyone, Nigel Saunders here. It is a cool morning out today. Last night went to 3 degrees below freezing and it got quite cool here in the greenhouse. So yesterday I moved a lot of the tropical trees from the greenhouse into the plant room and I'm still in the process of doing that. In the last video I repotted this tiger bark ficus. Here is a look at the tree after repotting. So I moved it from this pot into this pot because it has the legs underneath the pot. And the other tree that was in this pot, I have to repot it. And I don't think I'm going to put it in the same pot. I'm going to give it a little more room to grow. So I have this nice pot that Enzo made. Enzo's a member of the Toronto Bonsai Society, and he makes these really cool pots. So I think I'm going to plant it in here. It'll have lots of room for the roots to grow, and it should gain a lot of vigor and thicken up quite a bit. It'll really, I think, get a boost in vigor going in the bigger pot. I'll move the tiger bark ficus into the plant room, and then I'll begin the repotting of the Ficus microcarpa. This tree is a cutting from the year 2000, and I did a lot of root work on it in December of last year. I cut off a big bulbous root. I did carving of this root, the thick one coming down here. So I don't think the root system would be too bad on it. So let's begin. Let's start combing out the roots. Okay, here I go. So you can see there's a lot of fine roots have formed where I cut that big thick root off almost a year ago. So this cutting was always grown in a very small pot. I gave it to a friend of mine at work, and he kept it on his desk for quite a few years, and then he was laid off and the tree was just sitting on his desk. So I thought, well, I better take it home, and if I ever see him again I'll give it back to him. But I haven't seen him in 20 years, so I don't even know where the guy is now. And this cutting is one of the cuttings off my very first bonsai. Okay, so that's bare rooted now. So I'll clean up and then we can start the root pruning. I'll start by misting the roots. They're a little dry. And then I'll begin the root pruning. So they're pretty good. Like, you know, I did all the heavy duty root work last year, so it's just kind of fine roots now. There's one here that's getting quite long. I'll snip that off. Shorter. There's a few here I can snip off a bit shorter, just to keep them in check, balanced. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. I'll snip some of the roots on the bottom. There's one here that's kind of not radial, so I'm going to remove that root. Like that. So I did a big cut on the bottom here, and it's pretty well healed over, that big root I cut off. I'll just snip these smaller roots back a bit. I like to keep the roots on the bottom. I just reduce them back to, very short roots. Feeder roots, I guess. Okay, so next I want to comb out the roots and then just make sure I've got all the roots going in a nice radial direction.
hair sticking up here, root. Some that aren't growing radially here I can take off. This one's growing at a funny angle, and I think I have a better root below, so I'll take that one right off. Like that. This one's going across the other root. This one can be cut back further, it's a little too vigorous. Now in here I have a root. That's the one I already pruned off, but the stump of it is going the wrong direction, so I'm going to clean that up. Taking that off. I think that would spoil the root base in the future. There's a few roots here that are growing a little too high up. I'll prune those back. And I think the rest are pretty good. This is a very light root pruning. Let me snip those ones back a bit. Yeah, a very light root pruning today on this tree. That's it. It is root pruned. So I think the front of the tree is here. Yeah, it has a better looking root system now that I've carved this one. It looks better than the other side, which is a little bulbous in this section, has a bulbous root here. That one will need some carving in the future. So once I plant the tree, I'll do a little bit of pruning up top also, reducing it back and deciding what branches I want to prune off and keep. So that's the next step, get the tree planted. Here's a look at the pot that Enzo made. It's a really interesting pot. I really like it. Yeah, and it's all reinforced. I think this tree will look quite nice in here. It's a good size. You can see, the roots have room to grow, but it's not ridiculously big. I think it's a good match for the tree. I'm just planning on how I would have it. Probably planting it up on the hill like this, having it come down. So I will get drainage screen in the bottom of the pot, drainage screens, like that. And I'll get a base layer of soil in the pot. All right, here I go with the soil. And I'll plant the tree on top of this mound here. So I'm just picking the front of the tree. I have some options of rotating it. The planting angle is pretty well set by the root base. I can't, tilt it dramatically or anything. Now, is that too low in the pot? The pot has like a higher back to it, and I want the roots kind of flowing down into the soil. Yeah, I think I need more soil. I think I've got to build it up in a bit of a mound. More like that. Yeah, I think that's looking pretty good there. So I may need a stone here to hold the tree in place until these roots get established in the new soil. But I think that's pretty good. I'll just make sure my roots are combed out. Because these roots will thicken up and become major surface roots someday. So it's important to get them going in a good direction when they're young. Okay, so that's looking good. I'll add some soil over here, kind of stabilize the tree in the pot. So that's holding the tree in place. I'll get some more soil to top it up. And once the roots get established, I can always, comb some of this soil away or rake some of this soil away, kind of exposing the roots. But for now, I just want to keep all those roots buried so they grow well and grow into that soil. And this will look really good someday, with moss on top of it, and it'll look very natural in this container. This container kind of reminds me of, a ficus growing on rocks like they do in Africa. Yeah, so I think that's planted. I'm going to give it a water, just to water it in. So here I go with the water. Now the tree's pretty firm in that pot. It's held in place quite nicely by the soil. Okay, that'll do. So now I'll show you what it looks like, and I'll begin the pruning of the top of the tree. I will place a stone up here just to make sure the tree stays in place. I don't want it like tipping out of the pot, so that's really good. Okay, so let me clean up, and then we'll come back and prune up the top of the tree. I'll get rid of this water. Here's a look at what the tree looks like in the pot. So I like it. I think it suits it. I don't have many trees planted in kind of natural looking slabs or rock planters. So I think it'll be a cool addition. So next I got to prune the tree up. It's getting, quite long. There's a lot of long shoots that are quite straight. So I'm going to prune it back now. So the first thing, on this lowest branch here, I have a shoot sticking straight up here. And this branch doesn't flow. It doesn't flow outwards with the branch. It kind of almost crosses back. So I'm going to remove that one totally. So here I go. That one's gone. There's a little dead branch here I can take off. Like that. And then these ones need to be reduced back, so I'll prune them to a leaf that faces downwards so the branch continues to grow horizontally or cascading. So I'll prune it back to here. And this one, I have a leaf scar back here, but I'm going to leave some leaves on it, so I'll prune it back to here, just taking the tip off. I'll also remove this leaf that's growing straight up here. So I just have the one leaf on it. So now I'll follow the trunk line up. It divides into two major intersections, one kind of at the back here and one coming forwards. So I'll want to encourage, this forwards part to grow into the main part of the trunk line. So I've got a big long shoot here that's very straight, no taper, no movement. So I'm going to have to prune it back further than my outermost leaf. So I'm looking for leaf scars so I can directional prune it. I have one way back here, I have one on the bottom here, so I think I'll take it off to here. Like that. And then when new shoots grow out on this branch, I may be able to reduce it further once I see what's happening. So following this trunk line up, everything's looking good. I could snip the very top off here, the tip. Keeping this trunk line fanning outwards.
This one I can prune back to this leaf, like that. Then if I follow this other part of the trunk line up, I have a branch that's crossing everything, so I'm going to take that out. So that one gets removed. The one coming out here, this branch is already formed from the bud at the base of this leaf, so this is an old leaf I can remove. And then again, if I prune it out to here, it's getting quite tall, so I'm looking for leaf scars. There's one on the bottom here, so I'll prune it off to here. Taking that off. There's some old leaves here I can prune away. And this tree will be going into the plant room where it's nice and warm and humid and there's good light. So it's been out here in the cool greenhouse. Once it goes indoors, it'll go, wow, it's spring, and it'll just burst with vigor. I'll prune this straight one back to an outwards facing leaf scar here. Taking that tip off. And then I've got, I kind of want this to be my main trunk line, this one here, and this one more of a branch. So I'm going to prune this one back to here at least, this outward facing leaf, like that. And this tall one behind it here. What do I want to do with that? I don't want these two trunks parallel. So I'm thinking of actually taking this whole top off and developing this as the branch. I think that would be a good idea. So here I go. Taking that off. I'm developing, my main canopy and leader from here. So then I've got this one out the back, and I want to keep it pruned up so it's not quite so vigorous. So I'll prune to this downward facing leaf here. I'll take that upward leaf pointing straight up off. I've got a branch sticking straight up here. I'm going to remove that totally, like that. And then this branch, this leaf is already, this branch here has already come from the bud at the base of this leaf, so it's an old leaf. I'll take that off. And then I'll prune this one back to a downwards facing leaf here. So that leaves me with the branch coming out the back now, and I have a good downwards facing leaf way back here, so I'll prune it back quite short to here. Okay, so that's got the tree pruned up. Now let me just stand back and look at it. Yeah, I think all is looking good on it. I'm wondering if someday, if I prune the top off, have it more as a cascade someday, maybe. It's nice to keep a bit of a crown on it. I'm looking in this area, I've got kind of 3 branches growing from one spot. I think I want to take one of these off. This one's thick and kind of straight. This one's better. I think I will take this back one off. So here I go. That's gone. And then I'm wondering about the top, if I could reduce it back just to this leader. I think I will. Taking that off. I think that's better. Has more movement, taper. This back branch, I have a leaf here. I could take it back further, and I think I will.
I could even take this one back further. There's a leaf scar down here and I've got a leaf out the back, so I'm going to remove the tip. Taking it back like that. And I think that's it. I think it's looking good. So I'll re-oil my scissors, make sure they're nice and clean and well kept. These are my best scissors. I want to keep them nice. So I've got my little dab of olive oil that I'll put on the blades until the next time I use them. Here's a look at what I took off the tree today. So a lot, like most of the tree. And here's what's left. So you can see it's got the basics of a good branch structure. I think it'll really suit this rock planting. So indoors it goes, and I'll let it grow, and we'll see it again in the future. I really enjoy the process of developing trees from cuttings and seeds and developing a theme to the bonsai. Like this one is on this rock planter. It's kind of windswept or a bit cascade, and I think this tree will have a really good future. I'm looking forward to developing it. So thanks very much, Enzo, for the pot. I really like it, and it really suits this tree, I think. So that's all for today. I'm Nigel Saunders. Thanks for joining me in the Bonsai Zone.